Hey, KU fans, welcome back to KU Sports Extra with Tom Keegan, who is without his glasses, I think.
I have them.
Yeah, well, they're here if we need them. I'm Matt Tait, and we're going to talk some more KU football as the gauntlet continues.
Whew.
Yeah, say that again.
Whew.
It's another ranked opponent coming to town for the Jayhawks this week after getting blown out last week at Oklahoma State on really a pretty weird day. Just your take on that whole experience, covering that homecoming crash and the game that followed, and it was pretty unusual.
Yeah, I'm glad they decided to play the game because I don't know what not playing it would have done for anybody. It would have made everyone sit and obsess on such a sad thing. I think it was a good distraction for Oklahoma State fans and just a very, very sad day overall. But
yeah, it did. It gave the players something to rally around too. Not that they needed to, but they had a bye week the week before that. Can you imagine if they had to sit another week off not playing because of something like that?
Right.
I mean, that would have been rough. So I think it was the right move, and it probably wouldn't have mattered if they played it or they didn't. Kansas wasn't going to compete with that defense.
No, yeah, that was the tragedy had nothing to do with the
final score, right?
The final score, no. I mean, Oklahoma State's defense is unbelievable. And Kansas's offensive line, once Jordan Shelley-Smith got injured and left the game, became even worse. So,
Oklahoma State second in the nation in sacks. You know who number 3 is?
Yeah.
This week's opponent.
Right.
Oh, boy. Oklahoma comes to town this week. Number 14, 2:30 p.m. at Memorial Stadium on Halloween of all days. And that's the good news. The good news is not that Oklahoma's coming. It's the fact that after Oklahoma comes in here, 3 of KU's Final Four opponents are currently unranked. It's the Big 12. It's nasty every week. David Beatty's talked about that. Everybody knows that. But it does get a little bit easier. Of course, TCU, unbeaten TCU, trying to qualify for the playoff. TCU is the one team in that foursome that's ranked. But the other 3 are 9 and 11 combined. And, maybe a little easier than what they've seen the last few weeks.
Yeah, not easier is not the right word. Not as difficult.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. But that's good news at this point.
That is good news. And there's some bad news. And the bad news is that homecoming falls on Halloween. You can't help that you have to play football on Halloween. And actually, Kansas's game time isn't horrible for Halloween.
Not 6. Yeah, that would have been terrible.
Would have been better if it were at 11. But you don't have to schedule your homecoming on Halloween.
Right.
Thereby preventing parents from flying in for their homecoming weekend because they've got to stay home and help their kids with their costumes and hand out candy to the neighborhood kids. Kansas has to get more football-minded and more aggressive on scheduling issues, pro-football type stuff. You got to think these things through. Football, football, football.
I agree. Yeah, you can't, as David Beatty said, you can't control what day Halloween falls on, but you can control the rest.
You can control what day you have your homecoming.
Definitely.
You know?
Quick Halloween note that I think everyone will enjoy. Fish Smithson. Did my 5 questions with Fish this week. It'll be in our game day coverage in Saturday's paper. And I asked him his favorite costume that he'd ever seen.
Was it a worm?
It wasn't. He told me his favorite costume. You can read about it in Saturday's paper. It wasn't his, but a cousin of his.
It wasn't a lure, was it?
But I followed it up, and I asked him that very thing. Have you ever dressed as a fish for Halloween? And he almost fell over.
Oh, man. Never.
No?
I never even thought of that.
Right.
I probably should do that. Yeah. I never even thought of that. That's a good one.
Maybe he'll do it Saturday night. Maybe they'll go out. He'll give a spirited performance on the field, and then he'll go dressed like a fish Halloween night.
Fish don't have arms. It's pretty hard to tackle without arms.
Yeah, you better save it for the evening for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's break this game down. As I mentioned, Oklahoma ranks 3rd in the nation in sacks, behind Oklahoma State, just 2 behind them, 25 sacks already.
So they very well could pass them this week.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it because that offensive line is not only inexperienced, not only overmatched, but now depleted with Jordan Shelley-Smith without dealing with a concussion.
I thought you were going with the duct tape cliche there. I'm glad you stopped yourself. Being held together by duct tape.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
Literally. But beyond that, I think their offense is obviously very talented too. The last time KU saw Oklahoma, Samaje Perine.
427 yards?
427 yards on just 23 carries. That's frightening. I mean, that is
Remember we
frightening.
saw him, I mean, we talk about this all the time, but we saw him in the garage after the game, a great hamburger place. and he looked like he hadn't been touched. It looked like he could go out and play again, but then we thought about it.
He hadn't been touched.
Correct. That was the most easy 427 yards in the history of football. Of course, it might be the only 427 yards in the history of football, because I'm sure the NFL single game record is not
427. Yeah,
do you know who has it?
No, I don't.
I don't either.
No, we'll look that up and we'll talk about it next week. It'll be awesome.
Barry Sanders, maybe.
That'd be a good guess. Eric Dickerson, maybe. Another good guess.
Maybe.
Yeah. Chris Johnson, maybe. Another good
maybe.
guess. CJ2K.
O.J. Simpson? No.
We're getting in a dark place here. But,
yeah,
much like Baylor when they came to town, we talked about it right here. If Art Briles' sole goal that day would have been to score 100 points, he could have done it. I think if Bob Stoops' sole goal this week was to get Samaje Perine to break his own record and get 428 yards or higher, I think he could probably do it.
But he's not motivated to do that. Who he would be motivated to do that to, however, would be Iowa State.
Yeah.
Because Mark Mangino was fired as the offensive coordinator, and Stoops loves Mangino.
Right. That'd be awesome. But either way, Perine's a handful. Mixon's a handful as his, quote-unquote backup. Baker Mayfield's playing well. He's got two burners that I don't know that KU secondary has a chance to keep up with in Sterling Shepard and D.D. Westbrook. Whatever Oklahoma decides to do, if they decide to throw it and beat up that secondary, or if they decide to just plow right ahead and run at this overmatched, undersized KU defense, I think they're going to have no problem doing it, and I think Kansas is in for another rough, long day, this time really on both sides of the ball.
There's no question about it. This is the biggest mismatch of the year because Oklahoma gets better and better and better.
Right.
And Kansas gets thinner and thinner because of injuries like the concussion to Jordan Shelley-Smith, who protects the quarterback's blind side. Now you're going to play the game at times with two true freshman tackles, really a rarity.
Amazing.
And the other one would be Larry Mazik. He'll probably start with a true freshman when Larry needs a rest. They will have two true freshman tackles in there.
And that could happen early because he's already injured. I mean, Mazik got banged up last week against Oklahoma State. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Let's jump into it and just tell us how bad the damage is, the pick that you made, the score. Everybody loves scores. Everybody loves these picks. Nobody loves seeing picks more than Gary Bedore, who usually puts something outlandish and outrageous for his pick in the paper. He usually does something like 77-2 or something like that. I don't know if that's your pick. It might be.
No, it's 66-14.
Okay.
And probably most of the damage being done in the first half. These guys do have hearts, college football coaches. They don't like to completely run things up.
Right.
Kansas, I'd say they could draw a little fuel from the crowd, but I don't know how big the crowd's going to be.
Yeah, it helps that they're at home. There's no doubt they're more comfortable here. They play better here, but this matchup is just so nasty. So I'm right there with you. I've got actually just the one touchdown for Kansas, 59-7 Oklahoma, in a game that looks a lot like that Baylor game. It was 66-7. So maybe we're wrong, but I don't know. Who are you going to pick to do well for Kansas? Somebody has to do well. I mean, no matter what the score is, guys make good plays, guys have nice days, that kind of thing. We've seen it. Some of your Keegan ratings are harder than others to come up with 10 guys, but for the most part, you can usually find at least 4 or 5. And then usually, if a guy gets a pun off successfully, he's in the ratings.
Yeah, it's been a rough year to fill that out, but as you turn into the second half of the season, the guys you look for to really up their games are true freshmen because now they're getting used to the speed of the game. But then seniors as well because they can smell the finish line. They hate that it's coming to a close, and they don't want to waste a single play. And Ben Goodman is that kind of a player anyways, and he's matched up against a true freshman for Oklahoma now. True freshman for Oklahoma is bigger, faster, longer than one for Kansas, but Ben Goodman is aware of that, and it's really got him psyched up to play the game.
Yeah, he was talking about that matchup. It's Drew Samia, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but he looked pretty excited when he was talking about it.
Yeah, he did.
Thought it was great, too. You pointed out, Ben said, hey, I've been waiting for a long time to go up against a true freshman on the offensive line, and you pointed out to him, well, Oklahoma's DNs are probably pretty excited to go up against KU's true freshman on the offensive line. He goes, yeah, sure. It was great. But, good for him. He didn't have a good game last week. He'd be the first to tell you that. David Beatty said he could tell. Goodman took it personally that he didn't play well against Oklahoma State. So, makes sense. Very solid pick. I'm going to go with a different pick. I might have picked him once already. And I'm not picking him this week just because I like his nickname. You probably know who that is.
Fish?
The local boy.
The local boy.
You just don't bet against the streak.
Two good games in a row for the local boy and for Daniel Wise.
That's right. Double-digit tackles in back-to-back games for Joe Dineen. There's no reason to think that he will not keep that rolling. He really has figured it out. He talked about playing linebacker. He loves it now. He's playing on instinct. He's not thinking as much. I asked Clint Bowen about him this week. Another local boy in his own right. Local man, maybe, would be the right way to call Clint, the local man.
Local man, not loco, local.
Loco for wanting the Kansas job, but that's another story. But yeah, Joe Dineen, I think, has another big game. And what Bowen was talking about is, he's figured it out. He plays with passion every time he steps on the field.
And when he plays, let's face it, when Joe Dineen steps on a football field, he's living La Vida Loca.
Oh, my goodness.
La Vida Loco.
Loca?
La Vida Loca.
The only good thing about that is that you didn't sing it. I don't know that you could, but...
Then I muffed it.
Yeah. All right, well, let's finish up in that beautiful segue with the most obnoxious man in sports. Who do you have this week?
I have the managers and coaches in the American League and whoever it was from Rawlings who decided that 25% of the formula for selecting Gold Glove winners would be based on a sabermetric formula. That's two formulas too much. Sabermetrics for defense, give me a break. Lorenzo Cain is not a finalist for American League Gold Glove. Give me another break. Watch the guy. Don't read formulas. Watch how much territory the guy covers, how quickly he gets a break on a ball. If he's not a Gold Glove outfielder, I don't know who is.
What are the sabermetrics for defense? Do you even know?
No, I do not want to see that formula. No, I only have, let's say, 20 years left. I'm not going to spend a minute of it on defensive sabermetrics.
For
Give
baseball.
me a break. Yeah.
There are some of those stats that you don't hate. Most of them you do, but there are some in basketball that you've said you don't hate.
Absolutely, even in baseball.
Field goal percentage, those types of things, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, for defense, for baseball, for a guy that everybody knows clear as day is one of the best defensive players in the game.
Yeah.
That's ludicrous. Oh, it's obnoxious is what it is.
Don't start singing ludicrous
Don't
songs.
worry. We'll stick with Ricky Martin. That'll work. My most obnoxious man is also in the baseball world, and it's iPad Man. Have you seen this guy? Have you been watching the playoffs on TV? iPad Man. He stands there with his iPad for his promo, and he's always got two hands on it, and he acts like he doesn't know the camera's there, and he's doing something real poignant. He's oftentimes eating or playing on the iPad.
And what's more poignant than eating?
Give me a break with this guy. I mean,
a human advertisement.
Yeah, it's absolutely brutal. I don't know who's doing it. I'm sure it's Apple, I guess. That would make sense. That's the iPad. But holy cow. And then the worst part about this, there's like a subset of obnoxiousness here. The people that crowd around him so they can be a part of this.
And you're forgetting the most obnoxious part of this whole thing. He's cutting into exposure time for FanDuel and DraftKings.
Right.
I mean, come on. Can you let those two have a shot?
And that Viagra commercial that we haven't seen enough. That girl it's like every fifth commercial. We better stop there. That's been a good episode, and we'll leave it right there. For Tom Keegan, I'm Matt Tait. KU Oklahoma Saturday, 2:30. It's going to be scary out there, and not just because it's Halloween. We'll talk to you guys next time on KU Sports Extra.